Hi there, I'm Emily Wright, and welcome to the next 2 steps in a modern cellist manual. It's just a brief overview. So we're going to do some fourth position and some extensions. Those are 2 things that can scare a lot of entry-level students, and they really shouldn't be that difficult, but they do require a lot of diligence and practice anyway. I call fourth position karate chop position. It's not very scholarly, but it does create a good mental image. It's because if you're doing it right, the heel of your hand, this part here, karate chops the side of the cello, and your thumb is gently kind of in this nook here. Gently is the key word. Now, I talked earlier about having your hands squared at the cello. That's especially important in fourth position because if you're relying on the karate chop to stop you in the right place, if you have your hand cocked backwards like this, you can overshift by a long way. So instead of going like this, you can get into this. And you can end up a half step or even a whole step higher depending on the size of your hand. So, practicing getting into fourth position. The first time we usually encounter getting into fourth position is in the context of our G scale. So we go ahead and we run up our G scale. Okay, here we are. So the shift into fourth position is a shift from 4 to 1. So what I like to do is before I shift, charge my first finger with a little bit of energy. It is easier said than done at first. You might get something that sounds like this. That's fine. Let it sound kind of goopy in between the notes. That's completely fine. So I have you guys practice this shift 2 different ways. I love practicing shifts over a slur. So 4, 1, 4. When you come back down, you can check. See if that 4th finger is in tune with your open D. And then the second way I have you practice it is shifting in complete silence. So you go 4, rest, 1, rest, rest. Let's say you miss the shift. Don't squiggle around for it. So let's say you go like this. Don't go. Don't do that. Instead, go. And just say to yourself, is that flat or sharp? Because then you have actually done a useful repetition because that is what flat feels like. Then that kind of goes into a useful pile of information like, oh yeah, that's what a half step might feel like, as opposed to like, oh, I suck as a cellist. Okay, so the 2 different ways to practice shifting into fourth position, I mean, there are many more, but the ones I outline in the book are over a slur. And then the other way is with a rest in between the notes. Shift, shift. A good thing to remember is to always imagine that you're wearing a watch on your wrist and that somebody standing straight in front of you should be able to read the time on your watch the entire time. That will also prevent you from doing this scary cocked backwards thing that'll not only put you out of tune, but it'll hurt you. Okay, so then the next thing, extensions. I will tell you that if I make a mistake with my intonation, it is probably an extension. That is a function partially of the fact that I had an injured left hand for so long that I would invent all kinds of crazy fingerings to get around them. But also, it's just a challenging aspect of cello playing. So now I'm spending lots of time with the tuner, making sure I get them in tune. So the definition of an extension, it's one thing and one thing only. It's a whole step between 1 and 2. So you find them all over the place. Sometimes you have to reach low for like a low 1, other times you have to reach high for a high 4, but you get there with the same physical device. That is, driving a wedge between 1 and 2. Here's why. In the context of our D scale, the first 3 notes are D, E, F sharp. We got 3 whole steps in a row. So we'd normally play D with 1. Yay! We'd normally play 3 for E. Now, 4 sits on F. If we were trying to reach F sharp, you'd have to do all kinds of insane things with this finger, which is already shorter than the rest and weaker than the rest, just as a function of physiology, right? So these 2 fingers, though, are really dexterous. So what we do instead is we decide to put the burden on those 2. So 1, instead of hitting E with 3, we put the stretch there with 2. Have your thumb kind of loosely tripoded between those 2 fingers in your extension. And depending on the speed of your scale, if you're playing it really slow, you can move your first finger up to be comfortable. And then 4th finger is now that half step higher. So one more time. 1, put 2 where 3 would normally go, and then 4 is right in place. Some common mistakes people make when they're extending is they do like a mini shift. The difference between a shift and an extension is a shift, the hand stays in a compact position, and an extension, there's a momentary stretch. Do not let those two things get confused. So, first thing you do is you make the stretch. Okay, also, the cock backwards thing that happens in shifts also happens in extensions. I call that sailing east to go west. People love going, and then it's a really far stretch. Instead, keep that hand oriented as much as you can to where the person could read the watch if they're standing right in front of you. And the last mistake that people make during extensions is they jam their thumb really hard into the back of the neck, and then they keep it where it used to be, or they'll even move it back behind 1, which is the opposite direction of where you want it to go. So, my thumb is loose, and it actually travels a little bit, just a tiny bit, to accommodate the second finger, and then 4, nice and easy. So that's shifting into 4th position and getting some extensions done. By no means complete, but it is a preview as to what I cover in the next 2 chapters of a Modern Cellist Manual. Thanks.